Finally saw The Iron Claw last week. The new A24 movie about the legendary Von Erich family who ran the WCCW wrestling territory in Texas throughout the 70s and 80s, and it was just as phenomenal and devastating as promised. From the way it was filmed, holding on just one camera angle for long stretches, allowing the actors to really suck you into their monologues and conversations, to the performances themselves, the editing and pacing, and the overall tone of the movie, I really think director Sean Durkin knocked this one out of the park and delivered what is quite possibly the greatest professional wrestling film ever made here. It's neck and neck with The Wrestler starring Mickey Rourke in my eyes, and manages to outdo how depressing that one is with A True Story, which is saying a lot. I mean, it made my coworker Brandon Walker weep like a baby, if that's any indication of how heavy the Iron Claw gets.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Good movie.
Our other coworker, Stephen Shea, dropped an Iron Claw review as well, where he actually calls out Brandon Walker for crying during the movie.
If you're a bitch ass like Brandon Walker, you might cry.
I am very much on Brandon's side here and think not at least tearing up by the end makes you a robot without a pulse, which Stephen Shea is, but then again, I cried just as much at Avengers Endgame. You all remember, it wasn't my proudest moment. Anyway, for those who aren't familiar with the Von Erich story or the curse of the Von Erichs, it's an incredibly tragic one. If you don't want the movie spoiled, I'd stop watching here because I'm going to briefly explain it. All right, are we safe? We're in spoiler territory here, which is weird to say about A True Story, but whatever. The Iron Claw opens by showing Fritz Von Erich, the first Von Erich to ever step into the squared circle, struggling to break through in the business enough to support his family financially, but promising his wife he'd one day be NWA World's Heavyweight Champion. Fritz's real name was Jack Adkisson, but to get an edge up on all of the other heels of the 1950s, he worked in Nazi gimmick with his quote-unquote brother, Waldo Von Erich, an idea given to them by Stu Hart, Bret and Owen's father and their trainer, and it worked. He never won the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship he coveted so desperately throughout his career, but Fritz was a very successful wrestler for 2 decades before he transitioned to promoting and training, coaching, and torturing his sons, Kevin, David, Kerry, Mike, and Chris. From everything you can read and find about this guy online, he was seemingly just about as awful a person as you could ever imagine, and the epitome of one of those stage parents who forces their kids into pursuing their own dreams that they never achieved. That was Fritz Von Erich. I'm not sure if he was always a horrible guy, but Kevin Von Erich has said that his father was just never the same after his firstborn, Jack Jr., passed away at the age of 6 after being electrocuted by a trailer on the way home from school and falling face first into the snow, eventually drowning. This is where a lot of people consider the curse of the Von Erichs to start. Then, between 1984 and 1993, 4 of the 5 Von Erich brothers died, 3 of them by suicide. David was the first to go, dying of enteritis at age 25 in a hotel room in Japan right before his career was about to take off, and that had a big effect on the rest of the brothers as well. Mike was the next to go, overdosing at only 23 years old, and Chris and Kerry shot themselves at 21 and 33 years old, respectively. Kevin is the only remaining Von Erich brother to this day, and Zac Efron's performance as him in The Iron Claw is unreal. He got ridiculously jacked to play him and gets lost in the character completely, which is very hard for a guy as famous as Zac Efron to do. I don't feel like he's necessarily getting Oscar buzz for this, but I really think he should. I'd even throw nominations to Holt McCallany, who plays Fritz Von Erich, their father, Harris Dickinson, who plays David, and maybe even Jeremy Allen White, our favorite chef from The Bear, for playing Kerry Von Erich. Their on-screen chemistry is insane, and they make you feel like you're a fly on the wall for one tough family moment and conversation after another. It's obviously going to be tough to beat Cillian Murphy and Robert Downey Jr. for Oppenheimer this year, but I really hope the Iron Claw sees some nominations like those at the Academy Awards out of respect. Unfortunately, for runtime, pacing, and story reasons, Chris, the youngest Von Erich, was cut from the movie entirely before production, and the Iron Claw acts like he didn't exist. It's a real shame and almost ironic considering he was always the Von Erich who wanted to break through in wrestling and be a part of the family and couldn't. But after seeing the movie, I do sort of understand the filmmaker's decision. The real story is almost so sad it's unbelievable and seems Hollywoodified, which is crazy to say, but it's true. I would have preferred another 15-20 minutes to cover Chris's story and include him, but unfortunately we'll never see that. My only other knock on the Iron Claw is their bizarre casting of Ric Flair. I'm not the first hardcore wrestling fan to complain about this minute little detail, and I certainly won't be the last because, let's be honest, we're a complaining bunch, but it totally took me out of the movie at a pretty emotional, vital point. No offense to the poor guy playing him, who everyone is completely crapping on right now, but he just didn't look, sound, or act anything like the Nature Boy. He almost sounded like he was doing a Dusty Rhodes impression while he was cutting a promo, and he definitely didn't believe the words coming out of his mouth like Nate did. I'm sure most people won't care about that sort of thing, though, because he's in the movie for maybe 5 minutes tops. If you're not a wrestling fan, you probably don't care. And if you are a wrestling fan, the casting of Kevin Anton as Harley Race more than makes up for it, as does the amazing Tom Sawyer training montage. Dudes rock. Like I said earlier, the Iron Claw immediately earns a spot atop the best wrestling movies ever list, neck and neck with The Wrestler, but neither one of those movies is about wrestling, and that's part of what makes them so great. Both movies just use wrestling as the backdrop to tell their story, and this one is about brotherhood, family, the pursuit of greatness, being raised through toxic masculinity, and most importantly, resilience. The resilience of Kevin Von Erich through all of the tragedies his family has suffered is remarkable, and I'm glad the Iron Claw exists to shine a light on that, hopefully exposing a whole new generation to one of the greatest families to ever grace the squared circle.